Vicky, shall we start first? Let me call them.
Sure. All right. So Sunny C is joining. Yes. All right. Merry Christmas again. Excuse me. I wish you all had a very pleasant Christmas and get all the gifts you wanted. Oh, Joyce is here. Okay, I got your short answer question homework, but some of them just turned in like a minute before the class, and I couldn't go through them. I did go through three. I did go through three, Ryan, Joyce, and Sunny, right? And I see, and I glance the rest. I see you guys very motivated. Most of you answered to all three questions. Thank you. All right. And some of you already kind of capture how to nail short answer question because you have assertion, you have evidence, you have reasoning, right? But some of you really treat short answer questions short, right? You just, get to the bullet point without like evidence or reasoning part, right? But that's okay because this is our first try, right? So let's take a look. If that's your real exam next May, how are we going to answer to ABC, right? So question A right here, let me pull out the pen first. Okay, so question A specifically asks us to provide one evidence, one piece of evidence. So this evidence will be our assertion, right? And then what happened to the evidence? Okay, wait for it. We'll cover that. So whatever evidence you think about, that will be your assertion, right? So we need to come up with a new form of government, right? And in this time period, that's our period one, right? 1250 to 1450. So 1250 to 1450, I remember the rising of Islamic Empire, right? That's one. We also remember that we talk about the Middle Kingdom, right? So that's China. So also we mentioned Aztec and then Incas, right? So you have four possible assertions. Hi, Lucas, right? So we have four possible assertions right here. So if we talk about Islamic Empire, then their form of government, there are actually two, right? Either is caliphate or sultanate, right? So caliphate or sultanate, right? So you answer each one of them, either one of them will do, right? So let's do Islam as example. So your assertion will be during the time period from 1250 CE to 1450 CE, a new form of government appeared in the Islamic world, right? As Arabic managed to spread out, you need an assertion. So a new form of government called caliphate emerged or appeared. That would be your assertion. Okay, let me type it here. Okay, so for question A, you can say during, it's okay to repeat the question, all right? During the time period, all right, time period, during the time period between 1250 CE and 1450 CE, a new form, okay, a new form of government called or known as caliphate. Okay, so caliphate. I will recommend you to kind of use quotation mark or use underline or like circle it, whatever, when you take the exam. Why? Because if you have a quotation mark right here, it's kind of like a reminder to your examiner saying that, look, this is my assertion. You can do that. Okay, you can use quotation mark to mark your assertion, or you can simply just underline it. All right, that will make whoever your examiner will be their job much easier. All right, and you can also remind yourself, do I have all three underlines to nail short answer question, right? So during the time period between this time, a new form of government known as caliphate emerged. You can say emerged. Okay. So far you have your assertion. You answer directly to the question. That's your evidence. It's called caliphate, right? So now we need evidence, right? So what kind of evidence we have? Well, ask yourself, what caliphates we know? You can talk about Umayyad, or you can talk about what? Abbasid, right? That would be your evidence, because you claim a new form of government is caliphate. Now you need evidence to prove that, look, they do exist in history. Does that make sense? So you can say, after the first four caliphs, right? Caliphs, and Islamic empire was established, okay, known as Umayyad, right? Oops, come on, I want you, okay. Umayyad caliphate. All right, so here you have your evidence. So your assertion is caliphate, your evidence is Umayyad, okay? And then you can pair with like a modifier, an empire, an Islamic empire that managed. What happened? Okay, that managed to spread out, or like to control all the way from Spain to North India, right? Okay, so that's your evidence. Now we need to reason, right? We need to reason why this Umayyad Caliphate can support our assertion, right? So our claim now obviously is a caliphate, and then I want to make it, longer anyway. So our assertion is caliphate, our evidence is Umayyad, right? So now let's see. Prior to the establishment of Umayyad, once again, quotation mark, okay? So that remind your examiner, say, hey, look, here is my Umayyad Caliphate, right? Caliphate. Okay, so prior to the establishment of Umayyad Caliphate, right? The Afro-Eurasia was a Persian Empire, and along with Byzantine Empire, right? Byzantine Empire dominated condition, right? Condition with nomadic Turkish tribes controlling the Central Asia. All right. So we are reasoning why we believe this caliphate is a new form, right? Especially Umayyad. That makes sense. And then you will say, after the rise of Islamic power, right? This new form of government, okay, called, once again, remind your examiner, what did we claim? Caliphate, right? Caliphate took over the control from Persia and Turk. Right, there you go. So let's see. This is our way to attack short answer question. So if you look at this paragraph. That should be one paragraph only, right? So you have your first assertion is caliphate, right? Right here. So your very first sentence right away answer to the question. You don't need introduction. You don't need contextualization. It's a short answer question. It's not an essay, right? So you answer that caliphate. Does that answer to the question? It does, right? Evidence of new form of government, right? So our new form of government would be caliphate. And then our evidence would be Umayyad Caliphate. If you want to, you can talk about Abbasid as well, right? And then our reason is, how do you prove that Umayyad Caliphate? How do you prove that Umayyad Caliphate qualified as a new form of government in that time period? And then you reason that prior to the establishment of this Umayyad Caliphate, how's the world look like in Afro-Eurasia? Well, we remember, right? It was Byzantine controlling the Minor Asia. We have a Sassanid Empire, that's Persian Empire, right? Sitting right next to Byzantine. And in between, we have the Arabia Peninsula, right? And that time it was a it was a city-state. City-state. What is that? A Arabic world, right? So in this case, we say prior to this establishment of this first Islamic empire, that's Umayyad Caliphate, right? It did not exist. This caliphate form of government did not exist. Okay, one sec. Didn't the Umayyad Caliphate empire begin before 1200 since it ended around? Oh, okay. Nina, you're right. So we cannot say Umayyad, right? So in this case, change it to what? Ottoman Empire. Right, Ottoman Empire, then that would be Sultanate. Thank you, Nina. I forgot about the time period. Okay, so right here, we change this Umayyad into Ottoman Sultanate, right? Ottoman Sultanate, right? And that work. Then you have to change your assertion as well. So that would be Sultan, right? Sultanate. And after, well, that would be after the fall. Okay, after the fall of Mongol, right? Mongol Empire. All right. Was as a right. So a new form of government known as the Sultanate emerged after the fall of the Mongol Empire, and Islamic Empire was established, known as Ottoman Sultanate, right? An Islamic empire that managed to control, well, then we're gonna change this one. So far right here, right? So managed to control Minor Asia, right? Minor Asia and Balkans, right? Balkans. And then we'll say the Afro-Eurasia was a Persian. Okay, and then we're gonna say, well, why it's a new form, right? And then prior to, so prior to the establishment, right? Establishment of Ottoman Empire, the Afro-Eurasia, the Afro-Eurasia was dominated by Mongol power, right? And then after the rise of Turkish power, right? The Turkish Islam power. This new form of government called now it's not caliphate anymore. It would be Sultanate. Took over the control from Mongol. Okay, from Mongol. All right. Thank you, Nina. Otherwise, I will lose this question A right away. You saved me. Thank you. All right. Does that make sense? So our assertion now changed to Sultanate, right? And then our evidence will be Ottoman, right? And we reason that because, you know, prior to that, the Afro-Eurasia was dominated, controlled by Mongol. If you want, you can even explain what kind of government form it was like under Mongol Empire, that you can say tributary, right? So it's from tributary and change it to sultanate. That makes sense? So you're gonna make sure you have all three parts, because each sub question, the full mark is 3. Assertion 1, evidence 1, and reasoning 1. Okay, if you're missing any part of it, then you won't get full mark. All right, so that's question A. Even though the question is kind of like hey, we already need to provide evidence, so what kind of evidence I can come up with to get the second point for each sub question? Well, when you claim sultanate, ask yourself which specific sultanate you know. That makes sense. Or in Byzantine, we have like a Cicero Papism, right? Byzantine is a Cicero Papism. That's after the split of Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire, also known as Byzantine, right? At the initial step, the emperor controlled both the religion and the secular world, right? So the emperor is the rule by law in charge of secular world, at the same time head of the church, right? That's called Cicero Papism, right? And this kind of government was not available prior to Byzantine Empire, because prior to that in Europe, right, Western Europe, it was the monarch a rule over their own kingdom, while the Roman Catholic Church Pope control religious world, right? So that would be another answer for you. That makes sense. Okay, and then question B. Question B is asking us provide one specific piece of evidence that demonstrates an innovation in the legal system. Okay, so this time we're gonna talk about legal system, right? So what kind of legal system is new? Remember Byzantine, we have Justinian's code, right? Justinian's code. If you don't want to talk about Byzantine, remember all this Islamic empire during this time period, right? Well, actually, we haven't covered Ottoman yet, but Ottoman Empire, they actually practice this dhimmis status. Remember, Quran indicate that no individual should be forced to convert into a Muslim, right? But Ottoman Empire had a way. Well, before Ottoman Empire, Umayyad and Abbasid, they both tried to use incentive, right, to attract, conquer people to convert into Islam, right? And that would be what? If you don't convert, you pay tax, right? And if you don't convert, you will be considered as a second-class citizen, right? If you don't convert, you don't have the chance to work in the government, right? You don't have a political rights, right? And that kind of idea was later adopted by Ottoman Empire. And if you want a specific term, it would be what? Dhimmis, okay, dhimmis. That would be, one sec, let me type it. So if you talk about Byzantine, I'm not going to type the whole paragraph this time, right? So if you want to talk about Byzantine, okay, then you have what? Legal system, right? So legal system will be Justinian's code. This is your assertion, all right? And your evidence is what? This will be what? The common law, okay? Evidence, evidence would be the common law, right? That later adopted by European states, right? And your reasoning, right, would be what? A prior, okay, prior to. Whenever you see new, right, like, new and then innovation, right? So in the question, we need to come up with a new form of government or an innovation. Innovation is also new, right? So your reasoning is easy in this case, since it's new. So you reason that prior to that, it was not available. That would be your reasoning. That's why you claim this assertion is the new form or innovation, right? So prior to Justinian's code, right? Europeans were under Roman Catholic Church, right? Roman Catholic Church rule in basically everything, right? So that would be your assertion, evidence, and reasoning, right? So because of this Justinian code, that somehow changed Europeans, legal system. So they have, gradually adopt this common law to govern over the secular world, and gradually the Pope's power authority will be undermined and being like marginalized into just the religious world. That makes sense. That would be your answer to question B. And then for question C, excuse me. So now we're gonna talk about what is that? Demonstrate the spread of religious idea, right? Religious idea. So we want to talk about the spread of religious idea. Again, the time period. This time I'm gonna be careful. All right. So spread of religious idea, 1250 to 1450. I would probably say Eastern Orthodox. All right. Or what else is also work? Spread of religious idea. Buddhism is not really fitting to that. You can say Neo-Confucianism. Okay, Neo-Confucianism also work because that's the religious idea invented or created by Song Dynasty. So that also fit into this period, right? So created by Song Dynasty and later influence Japan. Okay, that would be a spread of a religious idea. Or in Europe, I probably talk about Eastern Orthodox. You can also talk about Islam as well, because Islam in this case, they started to spread out their religious practice to Southeast Asia, right? Or to the sub-Saharan Western Africa, all right? So that would be your assertion. So if your assertion is Eastern Orthodox, that's fine, okay? Because that time Byzantine Empire still exists, right? And Byzantine Empire practice Eastern Orthodox, right? Byzantine Empire failed in 1453, right? And their religious idea would be Eastern Orthodox. So your question C, all right, question C, right here, C. All right, you will talk about what? You will talk about Eastern, right? So Eastern Orthodox, and they are a group within this big family called Christianity, right? And that would be your assertion. Oops, that's your assertion. And then your evidence, you can talk about what? Byzantine Empire, right? Byzantine Empire commissioned missionaries such as Cyril. If you don't know his name, it's fine. Just say missionaries. And then in that case, I will suggest you to capitalize letter M. That would be your evidence as well, such as Cyril to teach the religion, right? The religion in Eastern Europe, especially within the Slav region. All right. So if you don't know or don't recall Cyril, that's fine, because you have Slav region as your evidence, right? So you claim that spread of religious idea, right? So that's your assertion. What is your evidence to prove that this Eastern Orthodox really spread out of Byzantine? Well, you say, well, they influence a Slav community, right? So that this one will be your evidence, right? And then your reasoning will be what? So reason is that why this spread out of Eastern Orthodox can support your idea that during this time period, one particular religious ideas was like a prevalent, okay, outside their origin, okay? And then you will say reasoning, okay? You can refer back to the schism, right? So the schism, what is it? Motivated Byzantine, right? Byzantine Empire to expand its religion practice outside its origin, right? And then semicolon, thus this religious ideas began to spread into Slav Russia. Okay, there you go. That would be your reasoning, right? So you mentioned this schism. That's the split between Roman Catholic Church and Byzantine's Eastern Orthodox Church, right? So each of them both of them try to prove that they are the legitimate successor of Christianity, right? And because of this motivation that drive Byzantine Empire to really devote into this spreading out of Eastern Orthodox. Does that make sense? So so that's your possible answers to all of these three questions. All right, I'll give you a couple seconds to think about that. How to nail it: assertion, evidence, and reasoning. Yes, Ryan. Nina, could you please check if I made any mistake? You have good eyes. Nina.
So I typed it in the chat, but didn't the Justinian's Code, wasn't that created before 1200 CE, since it was used 1250 to 1450, but it was created before that time period?
But yes and no, because here we only is not, if you look at the question, all right, that demonstrates an innovation, right? So it did not specifically ask us, what kind of legal system was created. As long as this legal system continue to be practiced and it is innovation, right? That worked. Does that make sense, Nina?
Yes, and so also for C, the schism happened before 1200, though would that also work?
Spread, again, is demonstrate spread, right? So as long as this religion still spreading. Does that make sense? So this religion in particular, Eastern Orthodox, still continue to spread out their influence, right? So they can compete against the Roman Catholic Church, and that work. Because these kind of action or movement demonstrate the spread of a religious idea. And they did happen. It did not start from 1250, but it continued all the way to the fall of Byzantine Empire. Does that make sense to you, Nina?
Yes, thank you.
Of course, thank you. Anyone else want to challenge me? Oh, I feel so good, I'm being challenged. Thank you, Nina. And in this case, you're right. For question A, I was wrong. Any other questions? So I made a very good example for you guys to be very careful when you take the exam. Be careful of the time period given, okay, in the question, right? So I would lose question A and I will nail B and C. Shame on me. All right, so that's a short answer question. If we have no other, question or doubts about how we nail this short answer question, we're gonna move on to today's agenda. All right, and after today's class, we're gonna go back to practice multiple choice question. All right. Okay, so this is where we stopped yesterday, right? Columbian exchange, and this Columbian exchange brought in boatloads of silver and gold, right? And that enriched Spain for sure. But later on, Spain kind of mismanaged their finance, right? And then ended up with this hyperinflation within their own kingdom, and then kind of opened the window of opportunity for other European states to rise up and seize the opportunity to colonize the new world, right? So we're gonna move on to this one. It's called early modern trade economics. So this topic we're gonna focus on economics, all right? So in AP World History, economic system started from feudalism and then changed it to mercantilism and then evolved into capitalism, all right? And after capitalism, we have socialism and then communism, all right? That's pretty much all the ism you need to know if the question is related to economy for AP World, right? So once again, it's feudalism, and then it's mercantilism, and then capitalism, socialism, communism, right? So today we're gonna talk about mercantilism because we went through feudalism yesterday, right? So that was also an economic system. It was a isolated, self-sufficient society, right? So the economic system based on that structure of society is known as feudalism, right? And feudalism, that time, agriculture was the dominant economic activities, right? And basically all the agricultural industry, they produce food crops, right? And not necessarily cash crop. But now things were about to change. After the New World was discovered and Europeans enjoy the trade, with Native Americans, right? Because that enriched European states, right? And now we have this new concept called mercantilism. So when we talk about mercantilism, if you want to define this concept, the easiest way is what? Mercantilism, it's a belief to promote the concept of trade surplus. So to define mercantilism, use these two words, trade surplus, right? So what is trade surplus? Trade surplus indicates that a state has greater export than import, all right? So export is greater than import. That's called a trade surplus, all right? And why Europeans, they love this idea of mercantilism. Why do they want trade surplus? That's because back then, right? Back then, the world believed that our world has a fixed wealth, all right? So there's just so much wealth for the entire world to claim. Why is that? Because they believe wealth equals to gold and silver. Everything else is not wealth, right? Just like today, our wealth would be like what? The banknote, money, right? So money, M0, right? So cash, or you can have M1, right? Your deposit, your CD, right? But doesn't matter. It's whatever you have access to use as a currency to exchange for whatever you want to purchase, right? So today we believe the wealth is your money, right? But that time, the world believed wealth equals gold and silver, right? So if that statement stands, then this fixed wealth concept actually makes sense, right? Because there's so much, gold and silver deposit in the world. We cannot produce gold and silver. We cannot, right? We can mine, right? So Europeans believe that wealth equals to gold and silver. Because of that, world wealth is fixed. Because of that, you want to be the richest state in the world, you gonna get your hands on as much gold and silver as possible. How? You export. When you export, and foreign states gonna exchange gold or silver for your goods, your commodity. That makes sense? So that's the spirit of mercantilism, all right? So mercantilism is what when you see all these European states, right? Not all, but the major 5 powers, right? Spain, Portugal, Britain, Netherlands, and France, right? They all try to obtain this trade surplus, right? So now we know what it is. We know why Europeans adopt mercantilism. Now let's talk about how. Means how. How? Well, sell more, right? Sell more to foreign states, then you buy from them, right? And then second, it's what? Steal or interrupt other states' trade goods and colonies, right? While setting up and protecting your own. See, because if you can steal the trade goods, then you can sell them, you can export them, right? So once you export them, even though it's not yours, you stole them, right? But because you're stronger, right? And then you can trade this stolen goods for what? For gold and silver. All right, so that's mercantilism. Okay, so that's how this European states, they manage, to obtain trade surplus, right? And then later on, the mother countries even came up with this approach. They have colonies in the New World, right? So the mother country further take advantage from these colonies in America. How? If you look at this political cartoon, it's the spirit of mercantilism. Okay, mercantilism. So here we have the mother country. So very likely that refers to Britain, right? And then we have colonies, right? So colonies is serving what? Gold and silver, right? Foodstuffs and raw materials, right? So European states, their policy towards their colonies in the New World is that as long as the colonies provide gold and silver to the mother states, okay, along with the foodstuffs, right? Remember, like, potatoes, right? Turkeys, right? And so on. Also, raw materials. So raw materials includes what? Like iron, lumber. Okay, you can think of whatever valuable raw materials that can enable the mother country to produce their manufactured goods. All right, so all this gold and silver foodstuff and raw materials pretty much is kind of free to the mother countries, right? It's a form of tax from the colonies, right? So in that case, the mother country can further accumulate more wealth, right? Gold and silver is wealth already. Foodstuff, right? Enable the mother country to maintain a stable population growth, right? And then raw materials enable the mother countries to increase their production back home. All right, so that's mercantilism. All right, so that time, as long as the colonists, provide all this stuff required by the mother country, and they're pretty much cool. All right, they could do whatever they want. They could have their local government, right? They could have their domestic trades, okay, their business practice. They could even sign treaty with other colonies. Okay, so the mother country was like, as long as I get whatever I want, okay, the rest it's up to you. I don't really care, right? So this kind of is benign servant neglect, right? So colonies that time, even though they're economically deprived by their mother country, but to the colonies it's kind of worth it, because by doing so satisfy the mother country's desire, can exchange for the colonies' autonomy, right? Their freedom. Okay, so they kind of like separate from the mother countries in the political control, right? Now we have charter companies, right? Charter companies, remember we talked about that. So what is charter company? Anybody? What is charter company? We mentioned that before. Anyone? Charter?
Or companies are basically
Uh-huh.
companies where, so say Hudson Bay Company or East India Company, for example, where they're given the rights to administer an area and they give the profits back to the home country, in this case, Britain. And then they sort of just work as a colonial administration, except they're a company, I guess.
Uh-huh. Yes, you're right, right? So charter company, okay, when you see charter, just remind yourself, it's similar to modern days, like, business license, right? So if you wanna participate in this colonization business, right, you need to apply for a charter from your government, right? Either the parliament or the monarch, right? So with this charter, what benefit you can get? You will get the endorsement and protection from your government. So you could have your country's national flag on your merchant boat. And why is that important? Because that time this competition in colonization was very severe, right? All the European powers, they tried to take advantage from America, right? And they would compete against each other in the colonies in America, right? So if you don't have your government's endorsement and support, you become the target of other colonies, right? So if you're a British colony, you could become the victim of French's colonists because they knew, you're illegal. So they could target you, all right, and try to rob you of your land and everything. But if you're a charter company, that's a whole different story though, because they knew, I don't want to mess up with you because you have your government behind you, all right? So charter company protect whichever business they want to participate in this colonization in the new world, right? And of course, you're gonna pay for this charter, right? Either in license fee or like in taxation form, all right? And this charter company would enable this business, okay, to not only colonize the new world or sometimes even India, right? But at the same time, okay, they get to establish their own government in the colonies. They even could have their own military force. Okay, so all these rights are included in this charter, right? So that's called charter company, right? So Britain, especially Britain, France, okay, they like to use this charter company to boom up their colonization in the new world. In comparison to Spain, it's a little bit different. Spain's colonization was actually controlled by the government directly. Remember encomienda, right? So Spanish colony in the new world, whoever went there is because of the incentive of encomienda, right? So Spanish monarchs granted land to whoever is willing to go, right? And whatever is on the land is yours, including people living there, right? So this colonization would be financially supported by the Spanish government, right? And what did the government want from this, encomienda? Tax, raw material, mercantilism, right? Raw material, food, gold, silver, right? But Britain, France, okay, Netherlands, it's slightly different, okay? Their colonies are most likely established and invested by private firms. So British government, for example, did not want to directly invest in this colonization process, right? Because it's too much money, right? Because Britain did not have these gold and silver sitting in their palace, ready for colonization, unlike Spain did, right? And then so Britain decided it's easier and better to encourage its own subjects to do so, right? But the government would provide support and protection, okay, when necessary, to make sure their colonies in the New World would thrive, right? Under in that case, the British government can really benefit from this mercantilism. That makes sense. So that's called charter companies, right? And a new form of business also was invented. It's called joint stock company. Joint stock company. Anybody know what is a joint stock company? Joint stock company is literally what it means. Joint stock. Anyone? Doesn't ring the bell? Joint stock? No? Okay. It's what? Because this colonization, this practice requires, okay, a big amount of money, okay, as the initial investment, right? So even if you're super rich, right, you could afford to have a sole enterprise to control 100% of this company. You could, but you probably didn't want to because the risk was way too high. If you invest everything you had, right, what if it failed? Well, you were left with penniless, right? But if you could find other people willing to form a company, right, and then each one, chipping whatever you can afford, right? And then based on your investment out of the total, okay, initial investment, then your percentage will be your share, right? So if this colonization works perfectly, at the year end, you have profit, and all these stockholders, they would get their bonus, right? According to their share percentage. That's called joint stock company, right? And if it failed, at least you would not lose everything you have. That's joint stock, right? Well, and because all this joint stock company and obtain the charter from their mother country, and their aim, their goal is only one, okay, to maximize their profit, all right? So in this case, in the colonies, in the New World, European joint stock companies, they're gonna compete against each other, right? So who get the most nature resource, right? Who get the most gold and silver, right? And who occupies more land. So this kind of competition, more likely than not, would lead to this war, all right? Because don't forget, they're charter company. They're allowed to have their local government and their local military force, right? And not to mention, they have their own mother country behind them, right? And when necessary, you call for help, and your mother country very likely will send Navy to support you, to protect you, right? So that's the charter company, right? Now, let's see. Competition and colonialism. So right here, these charter companies, right? For example, if you want evidence, when you talk about, okay, so possible short answer question, right? Describe a new form of business, all right? New form of business. Then you can say, well, assertion would be charter companies, right? And you need evidence, right? And the evidence would be Plymouth, Virginia, British East India, London Company. Okay, all this would be your evidence. All right. So they were granted rights similar to a small government, right? What could they do? Pretty much everything. Negotiate with the local rulers, right? So if they colonize Africa, remember Portugal, right? They have this trade post along the west coast of Africa. That could be their colony as well. And India, right? That's also Portugal, right? And in America, negotiate with the local rulers. That would be what? That would be other colonies or Indian tribes, their chiefs, right? And they could collect and distribute land. They can distribute land. Remember, indentured servant, right? So indentured servant after 7 years, okay, they become freemen, and then the trading company, like London Company, could, distribute land to this indentured servant, right? And this servant now become landlord, and then they also could formulate and administer basic justice. They have the law system. See that? But colonies, when they come up with their local law system, they're gonna refer to their mother country's laws. All right. So in this law system concern the mother country, okay, it's more strict than other issues. All right. And then hire soldiers for trade and colony protection. See, they could have their own military. Right. So based on whatever they could do, indicate in the charter, they're pretty much a small government already, right? So the mother country also often try and set up forts and port cities, right? See, mother country also want the best for all the colonies, right? Because only when these colonies thrives, the mother country can benefit from, right? So the reason they do so, the mother countries do so, is to keep enable a military force, right, to protect or take colonists, right? And eventually you will see they start to monopolize regional trade, right? Also, the mother countries, especially Britain, right, they will hire pirates, right? Recognize this one? Captain Jack, right? Caribbean Sea. So Caribbean, yeah, those Caribbean pirates, they're real in history, right? So Britain actually hired privateer, that's the pirates, to disrupt others' trade. Remember the Spanish Armada? Spanish Armada was the Spanish invincible naval force, right? And this Armada, Spanish Armada, was actually defeated by Britain under Queen Elizabeth I leadership. She managed to defeat Spanish Armada because she hired pirates. So commissioned the pirates into this Royal Navy, and entitled them captain, and they were actually authorized by Queen Elizabeth I to legally rob Spanish boat, right? So can you imagine that? A Spanish commercial boat encountered with the Caribbean pirates, and the Caribbean pirates said that I'm authorized by my queen, okay, Her Majesty, to legally rob you. Okay, so please subject yourself to us. So I'm legally robbing you, all right? Well, so Britain, you remember the event we talked about in 1588? Queen Elizabeth I defeat Spanish Armada. That's with the help of this Caribbean pirates, right? And most of this private activity took place around choke points, right? So it's kind of this essential, okay, key point right here. It's like a gate, right, to the other markets in this region, right? So choke points and large currents, most likely like a Caribbean Sea, it's a choke point. Let me show you, right? If you wanna get your hands in this colonization in America, you're gonna go through Caribbean Sea. So these islands right here become very important, right? So Spain took down Cuba for a reason, because Cuba is, an example of this choke points, right? So if you control Cuba, you pretty much control, this trade route between Europe and America, right? The other one is Straits of Malacca, okay, in where is that? Malaysia, right? So all this competition result in all this desire to control this choke points, once again result in competition for trade, right, and transportation, right? So that is the economic system, right? that time. So mercantilism, trade surplus. Why? Because they believe wealth is fixed. Why? Because wealth equals to gold and silver. Okay, that makes sense. So how to obtain this trade surplus? Well, you try to steal from others, okay, or you try to take advantage from your colonies, right? And you try to sell more, export more than import, right? And in order to do so, Spain adapt this encomienda system. So Spanish mercantilism is controlled, okay, by the Spanish government completely, okay, and the other European states, a different story. The other European states commission their private sectors to do the colonization, right? And that's under this new concept, new business type form called charter company, right? Charter company. All right. Next, we're gonna talk about centralization and new elites. What do I mean by that? So Spain demonstrate, okay, the benefit to do business with the American Indians, right? And then the other Europeans follows, right? So you will see this European monarchs, one way or another, they gradually accumulate wealth, right, from this trade or colonization, right? So to a point, all these monarchs, they want more. Okay, let's time travel back to feudalism, Europe. Before the age of exploration, Europe was under this feudalism social system / economic system, right? So that time we mentioned that between the king and the noble, even though according to the social hierarchy, the king is the lord of the noble and the noble is the vassal to the king. But in reality, these two social classes, they're actually mutually independent, interdependent. Okay, why? Because the king did not have a standing army, right? The king did not. The king only have military to protect the castle. Okay, that's it. The palace, right? The capital. When there is a war with the against other states, right? Foreign states, the king would call for help from the nobles. Why? Because the nobles, they have standing armies. Okay, so how come the nobles, the vassal to the king, they have armies while the lord did not? It is because that time taxation is actually conducted by nobles, right? Because the nobles, they own the land that was granted by their king, right? So once they own the land, they could tax the peasants, right? And of course, you're gonna, give the taxation, the tax revenue to your king later on, right? But you would take whatever you believe belongs to you, right? And you give the rest to the king. So nobles, okay, they're normally richer than the kings, all right? So the kings could not afford to have a standing army, right? Because it's expensive, right? You're gonna pay salaries, you're gonna provide food, shelter, and their uniforms, right? And not to mention all this, training and gunpowders, right? So that's why the king and the nobles, they're mutually interdependent upon each other. But now things were about to change. After the age of exploration, and then later on colonization, all these monarchs, they profit from this practice, right? And they become richer. So once they become richer, this is human nature, right? Once we become rich, the next step we want will be power, right? So you will see a lot of businessmen, right? Entrepreneurs or capitalists, they started to get involved with politics, right? How? Either you run for the office, like Trump was a businessman, right? And then he ran for president and he won, right? Or you can have this interest group, right, formed. And then with that, you can negotiate and influence politicians, right, to come up with these laws that can actually benefit your business, right? So when people become rich, the next step people want would be power. So when we talk about power, we mainly talk about political power, right? So that same kind of psychology applied to all these monarchs in Europe. So you see the kings or queens, now they started to plan to undermine their nobility's power. So domestically, they want to centralize power. They're tired of sharing this power and be considered as equal with their nobles, right? So that's called centralization, right? Centralization, and that's domestically. And in regard of foreign issues, these European monarchs also want to, increase their status, right? How? To undermine the Roman Catholic Church's authority. Because look at this time period. It overlapped with European history. We had Protestant Reformation, right? So Protestant Reformation did not start by the monarchs. Instead, it started by Martin Luther, right? So he formed his own school underneath this Christianity, big family, right? So he later formed this new religion practice called Lutheranism, right? So Lutheranism called themselves Protestant, right? Because they protest against the Roman Catholic Church. That gives them the name Protestant, right? So Luther challenged the Roman Catholic Church and accusing the church being corrupt, right? And then, so Luther was mainly try to kind of make things right for churches in Europe. But this movement, Protestant Reformation movement, is aiming to challenge Roman Catholic Church, right? And that kind of appealed to all these European monarchs except Spain, right? So France, England, right? They seized the opportunity and sided with these Protestants, right? Whether or not these monarchs, they really believe in this, church reformation, but at least they can benefit from this reformation. Why? Because they can undermine the Roman Catholic Church's power, and then they could, take back, their power from the church, and they can actually be the king, okay, the monarch of their own kingdom. They no longer need to subject themselves to the Pope, right? So that's the centralization, okay, era. Domestically, monarchs try to undermine nobility's power. When it comes to foreign issues, monarchs try to take the opportunity of the Protestant Reformation to what? To undercut Roman Catholic Church's authority. All right. So by doing so, European monarchs can centralize power and become the head of both the secular world, the government, and their church, if possible, right? So that's centralization. And new elite, it's what? Gentry class. So this gentry class, who are they? The gentry class is similar to the concept as middle class in later industrialization era, right? So this new elite gentry class, they were the people that they invest in this colonization and make a profit and become wealthy, all right? That's the new elite gentry class, all right? So let's see. European started to centralize, all right, both domestically and, foreignly, right? So European became richer, right, from trade, and then government became more focused on organized tax collection and bureaucracy. All right, so now we have bureaucracy. Bureaucracy in modern days is associated with this negative denotation, right? Connotation. not denotation, connotation. So bureaucracy in modern days, whenever we use that, it's like, oh, you're such a bureaucrat, right? It's like, negative tone, right? And bureaucrat is like, you try to give other people hard time, right? Some business could be done in a very simple way, but it just like to add all these red tapes, right? And make people's life, hard. That's how we use this term bureaucracy to criticize, this government officials, right? They try to, kind of like, abuse their power and by torturing people's, daily life, right? So that's bureaucracy. But back then it was not. So bureaucracy was what? Was the government institution established directly by the monarch to assist, to help the monarch to better control the kingdom, to govern the people, right? So this bureaucracy, you can view them as like, the monarch's helpers, right? And prior to the establishment of bureaucracy, remember, it was the nobles that collect the tax for the monarch. It was the nobles govern over the people on the land within their own, territory, right? So it was the noble to govern the land and then the people and to collect tax for the monarch. And then the monarch now want to centralize power, right? So they want to take back the nobility's power. How? You need someone to do the job, right? Because there's no way a king will visit the village and say, hey, time to pay your tax, right? No way. So that's why the monarchs come up with this idea. How about we have a government, a bureaucracy, right? And then we can commission people we trust to do all the work for us. Then we can kind of, take back the power from the nobilities, right? So that's how the European monarchs, bit by bit, centralize power within their kingdom, right? So that's the meaning and the purpose of establishing bureaucracy. So rulers like what? Philip II in Spain, that's him, all right? Whenever you see a political cartoon with this long jar, long chin, okay, don't hesitate, they're Spanish, right? And the reason why is because Spanish, they like to keep this, royal blood tied. So they actually practice this, within family marriage, right? And in modern days, we know science taught us, right? This, marriage, this interfamily marriage, it's gonna alternate your gene, okay, in a bad way. But back then, Europeans did not believe that. Europeans believe what? If you marry your own family members, right? So your cousin, right? Or like, your nephew could be, right? Then you can keep this royal blood, stronger, right? So Philip II in Spain, that's him. Also Louis XIV in France. If you need evidence or example to support the concept called the absolutism, okay, practice centralized government, then Philip II and Louis XIV will be ideal, right? So these two kings, what did they do? They began to use the money, all right, they get from the colonization and power to control the nobles on the continent, right? But not England though. England is exception, okay? England in this time period, not only the king did not centralize power, the king tried but failed, right? So England would developed into a constitutional monarch government structure, okay? But we save that for later. But within the European continent, you see this centralization took place, right? So once was like a talk of war between noble and kings, right? So one has power, one has money, right? One has the title, one has the army, right? So it's a talk of war, right? And the king became a more united and powerful centralized system run by a monarch with a professional standing army. See, now they have money, so they can afford to have a standing army, right? Rather than one depending on the soldiers of nobles, right? And then rather than support the king with oaths and fealty, so what happened to these nobles? Well, nobles now they are being incorporated into the government. Okay, so go back to this bureaucracy, right? So the monarch, in order to better, control and govern the kingdom, they now started to hire helpers, right? So you may have a bureaucracy, so various department, right? So Department of Agriculture, Department of Commerce, Department of Education, you name it, right? So after that, the monarchs just need to control the head of each department. And these head of departments could be, common people that are hired by the monarch, but more likely would be what? The nobles. So you see the strategy here, the art of this European monarchs practicing here is by commissioning the nobles into the bureaucracy, right? You see the logic here? Nobles were no longer equal to the monarchs, because once the nobles began to work in the bureaucracy it's a subdivision of the government, right? And who is the head of government? The monarch. You see, so the nobles now, you are actually working for the monarchs. The monarch is now your big boss. So they are no longer considered as equal, right? But the monarch, by commissioning the nobles into the bureaucracy, on the surface, it looks like it's a promotion, right? You become the head of agriculture. Yay. Okay. But that's in theory. You're getting this promotion by your monarch. But in reality, you're being demoted. You used to be equal to your monarch, but now not anymore, right? Okay. And this change in policy, right? Because what opposed by some nobles there, hey, wait a second, something is not right here. It feels like I should celebrate because I got this job, but something deep inside is telling me, no, it's wrong, right? So when they figure out, say, hey, no, now I'm become your employees, right? So they opposed of this, new system, new government system, right? But was opportunistically taken by others who usually maintain their local economy and legal power, right? So increase their overall power by taking central bureaucratic and military position. Okay, so they this change, while opposed by some nobles, right? But this change actually taken by others, usually like maintaining their local economy and legal power, right? And it works so perfectly for the monarchs in this case, right? So here we talk about the logic behind how European monarchs gradually, centralize power and kind of make these nobles once very powerful, now become pretty irrelevant in the government, right? And then, of course, they were gonna encounter, the monarchs will have the conflict with the nobles for sure, right? So some nobles, they're, more logical or like a more critical. They will analyze this new system, right? And once they realize, no, I'm being demoted, right? So the conflicts with the nobles, right? And then in this case, the nobles has they have the biggest weapon is what? Hey, my king, don't forget your crown. It's because we recognize your authority, right? Because we support you as our king, right? But we can also what? Deny your leadership if we want to, right? So in this case, these monarchs in Europe, they need to figure out another way to claim their authority, their legitimacy, right? So back to feudalism era, who was going to be the king? It depends on who had the most support, from these nobles or later nobles, right? Whoever fought together to conquer the land, right? And then who was supported and elected by this group of soldiers, right? So that time, kings or queens, their authority and their legitimacy actually came from the support of their nobles. But now the monarchs, they really want to, differentiate themselves from their nobles. So they're gonna find a new source for their legitimacy, right? So a new concept was then invented called divine right of kings, right? So divine right of kings is what? My power to rule, okay, did not come from you, the nobles. It actually came from God. It was God's choice, right, that appointed me as the ruler, okay, to govern for the God, okay, to govern the God's people for the God, right? So that's divine right of king, right? So with this concept, right, European monarchs gradually, okay, distance themselves from nobles, right? So they are no longer equal, right? So my power came directly from God, all right? So if you believe in God, then you're gonna subject yourself to me, right? So this divine right of kings was a way for European monarchs to legitimate their rule, all right? So European society, right now, it's a Catholicism society, right? But later on, we're gonna have Protestants, all right? But in either way, they believe in the same God, right? So if you can claim that your power is given by God, then the entire society, your people will not question you because they believe in God. Why? Because they are Catholics, they are Protestants, all right? So that would be a, convenient way to establish the legitimacy of a monarch or of the government, right? So does that kind of, remind you of Islamic Empire? Similar logic, right? So Islamic Empire, the successors will, claim their sultanship, right? Their sultanate governed by the sultan, or their caliphate governed by a caliph, right? So caliph is the direct descendant from Muhammad, right? So if you're a devoted Muslim, you believe in Allah, and Allah's prophet is Muhammad. And now you're a monarch, it's caliph, it's the descendant from Muhammad. There's no way you will even try to question the legitimacy of your caliph or sultan, right? So in Europe, same thing. All right. So in Europe, during feudalism, it's not divine right of kings. It was the recognition of the nobles and the support from the nobles to secure this legitimacy of the monarchs in Europe. But now Europe kind of, learned from Islam, right? And they started to claim divine right of kings, okay? Well, so the divine right of kings doctrine held that the king received his authority directly from God, right? Therefore, could not be questioned, okay? And that's why, religion was so important back then in Europe, okay? The monarchs, they just want to simply make sure people believe in God. Once people believe in God, everything else will be easy, okay? You just say, I am the God chosen one, right? Some kings use like a state resource to build magnificent monuments and castles to demonstrate their power, right? So here illustrate the logic. For a monarch to really secure his rule within his kingdom, step one, you need to consolidate power, right? Once you consolidate power, you need to legitimate your rule, okay? So your owner's manual, how to be a, absolute king, okay, you have two to-do list. Number one is you must consolidate power, meaning what? You centralize power, right? Either you use gunpowder or you use a strategic, like, design a new government type with the bureaucracy so it can recruit your nobles into the government. That's it. That's one way too, all right? So consolidated power, gunpowder, okay, or a government structure. and then legitimate your rule, okay? Divine right of king, that would be religion, okay? So religion was a easy way, convenient way for monarchs to legitimate their rule. That means people recognize your authority, all right? So one way to legitimate a monarch's rule is through religion, okay? So religion, can anybody think of any example except divine right of kings in Europe? It could be your SAQ though. Can we think of any example to support the claim? Yes, Jason?
The mandate of heaven in China.
To be more specific? What kind of religion in China?
Confucianism or Neo-Confucianism.
Exactly, thank you. So Tang Dynasty, Song Dynasty, right? Good job. If you need evidence, you can say Confucius because it's religion, right? Religion, right? So you say religion, it's a way for monarch or ruler to legitimate their power. Example, Confucianism. Confucianism in China, right? So Confucianism kind of, shape how the society believe, right? You don't challenge your superiors, right? And the other example would be Islam, right? Okay, that's the first way you can legitimate your power, right? Your rule, right? And then second way is what? You build these buildings, right? Monument or castles, palace, right? So through this magnificent castles, okay, palace, you kind of demonstrate. Are you sure you want to challenge me? Whoever can build such, significant buildings, right? This person must be super powerful, right? So Palace of Versailles, I never visit there, but I have watched the documentary of this Versailles, okay? And just by watching it, okay, you can feel, okay, whoever lived in that palace must be super powerful, all right? So by, building this Palace of Versailles, it kind of showed not just to French people though, it's kind of a way to demonstrate the power, the wealth of France to the entire Europe, right? Also, another way is what? They can hire artists to paint their portraits like this one. So Louis XIV, he actually utilized the whole package to legitimate his rule, all right? So he claimed divine right of kings, right? And then he built a Palace of Versailles. He also hired artists to do this portraits, right? So this is like a real size, okay? Real life portrait, right? So when you walk into the palace with all this, gold and gold decoration, you are like in awe already. And then when you're walking through the hall, you see this portrait just, on the wall right in front of you. Okay, that time you started to tell yourself, okay, you don't want to challenge your king, right? You want to show your respect, right? So not all power was lost, right? Some of these kings, like Louis XIV of France, made the nobles a part of the centralized government as well, but still it's a demotion. So nobles soon became the ones who ran the government, right? Its bureaucracy and the military, and they were able to keep some of their local authority. But who is in charge now? Your monarch, right? So here we have monarch versus nobles. Most likely is the conflicts between these two. But sometimes because the monarch is willing to give you the power, okay, enable you to keep your local power, and on top of that you have salary, okay, for working for the government, and then you can also help the monarch to control the military. So some monarch was like, yeah, it's not bad, okay, even though I'm no longer a equal to my king, but my life is actually better. Okay, so that situation could also, be possible, but most likely the tension between the nobles and the monarch emerged, right? So now we know the new kind of government is a centralized, right? Centralized government with the establishment of bureaucracy, okay, and then claim divine right of king. How about the society? The new elite would be the gentry class, okay, the gentry class. So gentry class, they accumulate their fortune through the colonization, okay, starting in England. Okay, so in this time period, in Europe, we're gonna focus in Europe, okay, because this is the period when Europe started to rise up, okay, to a point they could, catch up and almost consider as equal to the previous Middle Kingdom, China and Islam, all right? But England, okay, when we talk about Europe in this period, European continent is gradually being centralized, okay, and lead to this absolutism government structure, except England, okay. So England and Netherlands, these two European states, they have more democratic idea, okay. They have more desire to seek for democracy, all right. So this absolutism was actually tried, okay, in England, but failed, right? So England and Netherlands, they're regular citizens, okay, and merchants. They began to accumulate this fortune, this wealth, right? And now they have money. What will they do? They buy land, right? Because land equals to wealth. Land, it's the nature resource, right? So you have the resource, you can grow some cash crop or fruit crop out of it, and then you can trade them for gold and silver. So these merchants in England and Netherlands, once they became richer, and they use their money to purchase more land, and that will bring them more wealth, right? So as a result, they rose up in Europe in these two states, okay, and they're known as the gentry class. So gentry class equals to the wealthy merchants, but they're wealthy, yes, but they did not have political power, okay, because they were not nobles. You see, they're wealthy merchants, but they were not the nobles. Okay, so that time, political power only were available to, of course, king, right, and nobles. That's it. Doesn't matter how wealthy a family could be, you will still be underneath the nobles, right? But nevertheless, money talk, right? So they could influence the nobles to some extent, right? And this gentry class kind of change the European lifestyle as well, because they are now rich, right? So they want to distinguish themselves from the rest of the people in European society, okay? So they started to purchase luxury goods from Asia or from Africa, right? So like, China, porcelains, right? And like silk, right? So to demonstrate that you're rich, so you spend your money in this imported luxury goods, right? And later on, okay, towards the late 19th century, this gentry class would become middle class, the bourgeoisie, and they devoted even more to decorate their home to a this middle class or gentry class standard, okay? Then you will see they have all these fancy curtains, sofa, okay, beds, and then ivories, okay, diamonds everywhere, right? So that's their lifestyle, okay? And besides that, this concept of selling agriculture for profit, right? So they buy land for what? For profit, right? So what kind of profit we're talking about? Growing cash crops. So you can sell them for money, right? So agriculture is no longer a practice just to provide the society for essentials, right? So prior to this commercialization, agriculture pretty much was aiming for provide the essentials to the society, so food, right? But now, because of this trade, proving that trade benefits everybody, right? And enrich people and the society as a whole. So this gentry class, they will accumulate more land and grow cash crop and sell them for profit. So this kind of practice is called commercialization. All right. So you see how Europe gradually changed, right? From feudalism, isolation, self-sufficient, to this Columbian exchange, adopt this mercantilism, right? And then gradually this rising gentry class, they started to practice commercialization, right? So European society is now opening up, no longer considered as what? No longer considered as like an isolated self-sufficient society, all right? And that was actually how European could shine in period 2, trade, commercialization, all right? So with the motivation to form, especially like, efficiently as possible, so commercial farmers, they began to utilize the land and labor to maximize their agricultural production, of course, right? So now land equals to money, because land can produce cash crop that you can sell in the market for money, right? So since land equals to money, right? So these farmers or landlords, they try to possess more land, right? As many lands as possible. So we have this movement called enclosure movement. Remember back to feudalism society, the multiple choice question we did? We have a map, right, showing manorialism, right? So that map shows a isolated agricultural society under the manors, rule, and with the church being the center of people's life within this, compact community. So that time, if you remember that map, we have common land, right? So we have common land. It's like the landlord did not really care. Okay, whoever has time, you want to plant there, go ahead, right? But now it's different because land equals to money, right? So farmers or landlords started to fence up their land. So it's like, no, this land is no longer accessible to the public. It's mine, okay? So I'm gonna use this land to grow coffee, to grow tobacco, right? So I can sell for money. So this movement is known as enclosure movement, all right? And then also removal of the traditional peasantry, right? Because they used to be able to, enjoy this common land rights, but because of this enclosure movement, this common land rights is no longer possible to the farmers, all right? Well, so that's the new rising social elites called the gentry class, right? And then if you're one of these new rising social elites, you are, accumulating more and more wealth. You're pretty rich already. What do you want next? Jace, take a guess. If you're one of this gentry class back then in Europe, you're now pretty rich. What's the next step you want to achieve? What would you want next? Jace. What would you possibly
next step?
You have wealth already. You don't have to worry about your life expenditure anymore. What do you want next?
Powers?
You want?
Power?
Hello?
Power?
Power, thank you. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I said it 3 times. I think.
I thought it's I want. Okay, that's what I heard. I want. I said, yeah, what do you want? Okay, sorry. Power, right? What kind of power?
Yes.
What kind of power?
Military power.
Thank you. Thank you. Years ago, I got a student, I said, what do you want next? And I got a student say, girlfriends. Okay, sure. So you want power, political powers, right? Thank you, thank you. Hey, so you want political powers because only if you have voice in the government, you can protect your private property, right? So if you have no say in the government, you gotta be careful because who knows when and why the government would come up with the accusation and saying you violate whatever law, right? And just confiscate your property, right? So you want protection. How? You want to have voice in the government. So that's why we call private property rights, right? So now we're talking about England, right? In England, these rising gentry, right? Also in Netherlands, right? They started to seek for political power. And England, if we study English history, then you would know England back to 13th century, they already had this Magna Carta, right? That already distinguished England away from the rest of European states. While other European states still, practice this feudalism, right? Monarch, nobles, everything. England already had Magna Carta to kind of, limit the monarch's power a little bit, not much, but a little bit. So this Magna Carta, you can view that as like, the prototype of modern day's constitution as well, all right? So this Magna Carta protect the nobles' right. So the nobles could kind of, advise or suggest the monarch, okay, what policies would be necessary, okay, and what reformation or economic reform, whatever, would help the development of the state. All right. So this Magna Carta already secure certain powers for the nobilities, the nobles, all right, from the monarch. And then in where is that? Okay, the House of Commons, right? So the House of Commons was actually created in the 17th century. Okay, so the Magna Carta established Parliament, right, to serve as like a advisor, consultant to the English monarch, right? And this Parliament back then only had one house, House of Lords, right? So British Parliament was called a unicameral to begin with. Unicameral means there's only one house, House of Lords, right? And Lord, of course, they can check upon their monarch, right? But after all, they are nobles, right? They probably didn't care that much about the rights of common people, right? So even though England was already considered more democratic than the rest of the European states, right? But still the common people, especially the gentry class, they believed that this House of Lords, when necessary, they definitely would side with the monarch because after all, they are the same class of people. They would not care we, the common people's needs, right, and interest. So this gentry class, they believe the only way to protect their private property is through, the political power that they are, seeking for. So they demand the Parliament to create a new house called House of Commons. And of course, initially, all these nobles was like, no, okay, we already have your interest in mind, all right? We don't need a second house. But the gentry class, insist, and eventually they got their wish in 17th century. So House of Commons was then established. So House of Commons members in this house, they were the new social elite, the gentry class, right? So the gentry class, they will look after each other. So when they design the laws, they cannot make sure the laws will protect their private property. That makes sense. So Britain already set the example, all right, for a democratic regime, okay? But the government type was still under the monarch's control, okay? But later on, we would have this glorious revolution, okay, to transform British government type into constitutional monarch, right? Okay, so that concludes this new, centralization, okay, in Europe. Typical example, Philip II of Spain and Louis XIV of France, right? And then the rising new elites will be the gentry class. Where are they from? Either from England or from Netherlands, right? And these European states, they're more democratic, or like a more possess more of this spirit of liberty, all right, democracy, all right. So later on the Enlightenment era, you will see this Enlightenment thinkers, all right, most likely they're from England or later France, okay. And France, because of this Enlightenment idea, would lead to the French Revolution as well, okay. So that's the centralization and new elites. And after that, let's move on to the Muslin gunpowder. Muslin gunpowder, right? So Muslin gunpowder, say, hey, didn't we talk about Muslin big time in the first and second class meeting? We did. But remember yesterday we mentioned that the Islamic Empire, even look at from the very beginning in 622 CE, when Muhammad started to spread out Islamic idea and unified the Arabian world, right? And all the way till when? Till the fall of Ottoman Empire, right? That would be 1917 during the World War I era, okay? So from 622 to 1917, we do have this Islamic Empire, and we have a golden age, right, of Islamic Empire. But remember, we talked about that yesterday. There is a gap, right? There's a gap between, okay, within this timeline of Islamic Empire, and the gap was when, or was when, when was the gap, or what happened to the gap to Islamic Empire? Anybody? So what is the gap? Islamic Empire from 622 all the way to 1917, there is a big gap that Islam was no longer in control. Anybody?
I think it was Spain, because they had this Reconquista campaign, and the Christians eventually reconquered Spain from the Muslims.
Yes and no. That's only within Spain, right? But in the same time, meanwhile, Ottoman Empire is still in charge, right? Took down the previous Byzantine. So Islamic Empire was there, right? So when we talk about the gap, is that Islam was no longer in charge. Anybody? The gap. All right, Lucas, do you recall? The gap years kind of stop Islamic power before. Yes.
I don't know.
Thank you. Okay. All right. We just talked about that yesterday. Nina, do you recall?
Was it the Mongols?
Thank you. Yes. Right. So Mongol established the biggest land-based empire. Remember, took down Abbasid. Is that right? And even took down the Anatolia trade city from where? From Byzantine Empire, right? So there's a gap time period that Islam was no longer in charge, right, in Asia, right? That was the Mongolian Empire. But after the fall of Mongol, right, a rising Turkish Islam power called Oz family took down Byzantine and establish Ottoman Empire, right? So that's the, the second wave of Islamic power, right? So Islamic power, we have, if you draw the timeline, you see, oh, it's like a roller coaster, okay? So they rise up, apex, and then decline, right? And Mongol control the previous Islamic world. And then Mongol fell, okay? And then we have the new rising Islamic power, Ottoman, all right? Ottoman Empire, right? So we got to talk about Ottoman today, right? Now, this is Mongol, right? So Mongol kind of, separate this Islamic empire, okay, into two waves, right? So Mongol Empire by 1279, right? But later Mongol fell, right? So let's compare what happened to the previous Mongol Empire. Can I do it? Yes, I can. Okay, right here. So remember Mongol Empire. This is the unified Mongol Empire, right? Under Genghis Khan's leadership and later his son, Ögedei, right? But after Ögedei died, the grandson divided this Mongol Empire into 4 khanates, right? Golden Horde, Yilkhan, and Khanate of Chagatai, and then the Great Khan, right? Then gradually Mongol started to show the sign of weakness, all right? And that create the opportunity for Islam to rise up again, all right? So here we have the new Islamic power, all right? So here, later on will become Ottoman, right? So the purple territory is Ottoman Empire, Islamic Empire. And the blue one is Safavid. And this is modern days Iran, all right? So modern days Iran, if you trace back, do you still recall? Before the rise of Islam, is in the Arabia Peninsula was actually sitting in between 2 mighty empire, right? One is Byzantine, the other one is Persian Empire, right? And the name of this Persian Empire, anybody recall? Before the rise of Islam, the Arabia world was sitting in between 2 empires. To the west is Byzantine, to the east is a Persian Empire called what?
It's called as the Sassanids.
Sassanid. Thank you. Yes. All right. So Sassanid Empire, and later on being conquered by Arabic force, right? And then it become this Umayyad Caliphate, part of it, right? And later Abbasid Caliphate, right? And then Mongol took it down, and then now Islam rise back again, and the empire right now is called Safavid. Don't get confused with this, Islamic term, right? So we have Sassanid, and then Abbasid, and then Safavid. You probably want to put them together as a package in order. So oh, okay. So it's Sassanid, that's Persian Empire, but later on they were being Islamized, okay, and into Abbasid. And then there's the gap, Mongolian control, right? But Mongolian control, they granted autonomy to the local government, right? So yeah, still kind of, Abbasid, right? And then after the fall of Mongol Empire, the new Islamic Empire right here, modern days Iran, would be Safavid. Does that make sense now? All right. So it's Sassanid, Abbasid, Safavid, right? Have these 3 terms tied together, right? And then remember the Delhi Sultanate did not really show tolerance to, Hinduism and Buddhism, right? So even though they still exist right this time, right, they would be conquered and replaced by Mughal Empire soon, right? So Mughal Empire is another Islamic government, right? So Islamic government in its Mughal Empire, if we want to replace empire with Islamic term, it would be Mughal Sultanate. So we know it's not Arabic government. It's non-Arabic, right? And this Safavid again would be Sultanate, so non-Arabic. And then Ottoman Empire again would be non-Arabic Sultanate. So what happened to Caliphate? Caliphate, because Arabs, they were not as powerful and influential as before. So now this Islamic empire were actually carried on by this non-Arab government, non-Arab leaders, all right? Okay, so after the fall of Mongol Empire, now we have three major Islamic empires, but all three there will be considered as sultanate, non-Arab, right? So first one here, Ottoman, right? Replace whom? Ottoman. Replace here, a sort of a portion of Golden Horde and Ilk Khan, right? So if you try to compare, so this Ottoman Empire took down Ilk Khan, right? And took down some of Golden Horde, right? And how about Safavid? Safavid would be here, Khanate of Chagatai, right? Khanate of Chagatai. Oh no, Safavid would be the Ilk Khan. And then what is that? Ottoman would be the Golden Horde, this region, right? And then how about Mughal? Mughal would be here, right? Sultanate of Delhi, right? And a bit from previous Great Khan right here, right? Okay, and then what happened to China? Who took over? Who took over the previous Mongol Empire?
Yuan Empire, Yuan Dynasty.
Ming Dynasty, thank you. Yes. Okay, so Mongol pretty much is like a thank you. Okay, and that's the end of this Mongol Golden Age, right? So who is in charge now? Ottoman, Safavid, Mughal, and Ming Dynasty, right? And Russia also claimed their independence from Mongol as well, right? Okay, so now we're gonna focus on this Muslim gunpowder empire. That would be these three: Ottoman, Safavid, and Mughal. All right, Ottoman, Safavid, and Mughal. All right. So we started from Ottoman. So Ottoman, remember this? The Turkish Muslims, right? They took down Constantinople, the capital of Byzantine Empire. So once the capital is gone, the empire is gone. All right. And when Ottoman took over, they have their golden age, right? So first of all, the significant ruler is Solomon the Magnificent. Okay, between 1520 to 1566, that time Byzantine was long gone, right? So Solomon the Magnificent. Whenever you see the monarch being title honored with a nickname, either the Great or the Magnificent or the Enlightened, that means they at least do one of the following achievements, right? Number one, they adopt religious tolerance. Whenever you see whoever the great, right, very likely offer religion freedom to the conquered people. Okay, that's number one. Number two is they either create their empire, okay, or they manage to expand the territory. All right, that's number two. To earn this title, the Great, either you adopt religion freedom or you establish this empire or manage to expand the territory. Number three, encourage education. All right, encourage education. Number four, encourage trade. So lead to this economic growth, right? So the Great, the Magnificent, at least one of the following, the aforementioned four achievements, right? So let's see, Solomon the second, the Magnificent, what did he do? Well, he expand, right? Expand the territory, right? So seriously threatened Central Europe to a point. Central Europe is like, oh my God, that's another Mongol, right? And the easternmost parts of a Catholic lands, all right? So that's the reason why Solomon was honored as the Magnificent, right? Also, actually, Solomon attempt to expand further to the Western Europe. He tried, but he was actually stopped at Vietnam. Okay, Vietnam twice, not once, but twice. So that's the time. You see, Europeans, right? Very unusually, they team up and fight against Ottoman Empire. Europe this time, they started to compete against each other for what? For colonies, right? For economic gains, right? So Europeans normally they couldn't get along well with each other, but this alliance in Vienna to fight against Ottoman actually happened twice. Okay, and the reason why Europeans they would put aside their opinions towards each other was because now they have the common enemy, right? So when there's a common enemy, you see this European states that would team up, all right? Anywho, so Ottoman tried twice to push their influence further down to Europe, but both times in Vietnam, they failed, they were defeated. So after the second time, they kind of gave up. Fine, you won. Okay, we will just be satisfied with what we have now, right? So that's why he is the magnificent, right? And Ottoman Empire actually conquered and incorporated many languages and people, right? Of course, that's why they're empire, right? On top of that, Ottoman Empire identified it with and enforced Sunni Islam, right? Sunni, supporter to the father-in-law, right? And believe that the leader of Islamic world should be highly respected, so should go through election, right? And how about Shia? Anybody recall the ideology for Shia Islam? Sunni is the group of people support the father-in-law to be the new leader. Yes, Jason.
Shia supported Ali, who was Muhammad's cousin and brother-in-law.
And so this is Shia. They believe no, it's not through election. You should maintain in Muhammad's family bloodline, right? Okay, so that's the difference between Shia and Sunni. Okay, so Ottoman is a Sunni Islam. Okay, the reason we emphasize that is because the conflicts between Sunni and Shia started from the moment Muhammad died, right? And we mentioned that it will continue to modern days between Iran and Iraq, right? So Sunni's neighboring state right here, Safavid Empire. Which Islam you think it will be? This is Sunni. So conflicts between modern day Iraq and Iran. So Iran's used to be Safavid Empire. So this would be a Shia Empire. Okay, Shia Muslim. Okay. Anywho, so it actively fought Shia Islam, right? In its on and off 200-year struggle against Persian Safavid Empire. Once again, we have this modifier, Persian before Safavid, the name of this empire, because the people, the nation to form this Safavid Empire is Persian, right? And Persia also began to use gunpowder weapons, all right? So that's Ottoman Empire. And Ottoman domestic policy, right? So Ottoman to found its empire, right? This empire is pretty massive. Look at the purple part, right? So the government's expenditure must be pretty high, right? So to found its empire, Ottoman have no choice but to focus mostly on heavy taxation. Well, that's the major revenue for any governments, right? Through taxation. So they had to levy heavy taxation from its conquered area, all right? And on top of that, agriculture, right? So Ottoman Empire was still a agricultural society, right? Unlike the Western Europeans, they started to practice this commercialization, right? And started to grow cash crops so they could trade with other states to obtain their mercantilism ideology, right? Okay, so conquered area means what? You're not Muslim, all right, or you do not practice Islam, right? So in that case, you either convert or you will be paying the jiksha, the tax enable you to continue to worship your own God, right? So that's the economic policy, all right? So heavy taxation upon conquered people, aka non-Muslim, right? And the whole economy still practice agricultural, okay, plantation. And while this Ottoman Empire maintained protection of non-Muslim, right? Because Quran says so, right? You cannot adopt violence to these non-Muslims, right? It still maintained the dhimmis. That's the possible answer for our short answer question 1, right? So dhimmis status, right? And jiksha. So dhimmis is what? Second-class citizen. Jiksha is what? The tax you pay to Ottoman Empire to enable yourself to continue your religious practice, right? Okay, so it was successful in expanding in the 16th and 17th century, yes, but its conquest and extensive wars is gonna burn out the government's budget, right? So twice in Vietnam, right, and the war Iron Chip, right, and this Persian, right, that would be what? Safavid Empire, right? So Ottoman Empire constantly engaged war with West Europeans, right? So the Vietnam twice, and along with the conflicts with the neighboring state, Safavid, because they are Shia Muslim, okay, and they are Persian people, even though they're both Islamic empire, but different, culture, different identity, right? Different school within Islamic family, right? That lead to these two Islamic empire constantly have, if not war, at least battle with each other, right? And that's not good because, within a country, if this country is like a constantly engaged in a war with other states, it's gonna eventually hurt the stability of the society, right? After all, no rational individual enjoy wars, right? Anywho, so this conquest and wars really took a toll on Ottoman Empire, right? And especially in Europe, Ottoman Empire struggled to control the Balkans. Okay, why? So here is the Balkans, right? Balkans Peninsula, all right? So why Ottoman Empire had the trouble to control Balkans? If you look at the map right here, it was the home to the ancient Greek Empire, right? And later Rome, and later what? Byzantine, right? So hundreds of years, okay, Balkans was under Christianity's influence, right? But Ottoman Empire, okay, Ottoman Empire, of course, within the empire, the mainland right here, they also have Christians, right? But not like the entire Balkans are composed by this Christianity community, right? So this is gonna be a big problem, right? So this, it was successful to expand the mighty empire, but because the war that really shaken the social stability, and on top of that, these conquered people in Balkans, they had big problem with the Islamic government, right? And these Balkans, they're home to most Eastern Orthodox Slavic people, right? So the internal conflicts, okay, will be one of the reasons that lead to the fall of the Ottoman Empire, all right? Okay, so that's the domestic policy, evidence, demise, and jiksha, all right? And then the overall empire rise, epics, and fall. And the rise, we already know, gunpowder, right? Took down Constantinople and replaced Byzantine, all right? Epochs is what? This Solomon the Significant, right? expanded the territory, okay, and then practice this heavy taxation, right? And that enabled the government to further use the money to engage in war, right? But lost to Europeans twice in Vietnam, right? These religious conflicts, okay, it's considered as an internal issue, right? Okay, would be another reason why Ottoman gradually started to show the sign of weakness, right? So that's domestic policy. And now let's talk about its military policy. Ottoman Empire's military policy is what? If you're not Muslim, right, you have no chance to work in the government. That includes the military, right? The military. But they try to control the Slavic Christian of the Balkans, right? But the overtaxed agricultural Turkish elites and the Timars is land grants for military service, right? So if you serve in the army, and then you will receive land in return, and they become sort of landlords, okay? So the landlords for them, this particular group of landlords, we call Timars, right? So this overtax and this Timars, right, pose a problem as well, because they're not happy about the Ottoman Empire, right? And with the threats of this rebellion from the discontent, definitely. And in order to keep these Christians and Turkish elites, right? Elites, they pay tax. North feudalism, European society, elites, they don't pay tax at all. Nobles, they don't. Okay, they collect tax from the peasants for the king. Okay, but the nobles themselves, they don't pay tax, right? Well, so in order to check upon these Christians in Balkans and this Turkish elites, the government of Ottoman Empire, remember, it's a Turkish Islamic government, right? So ideally, this Turkish elites would believe now we are the first class citizen, right? So we should enjoy all the benefits as a first class citizen, meaning what? Possess land, exempt from paying tax, right? But in Ottoman Empire, not really, because these Turkish elites, they have to pay tax, right? And then also this Balkans Christianity really make Ottoman Empire busy. Okay. Anywho, so Ottoman Empire began the Devshirme, okay, Devshirme, known as the blood tax. Okay, so Devshirme. Now every new rising states know one principle. If you really want to expand the power of your empire, is to what? Is to establish a strong military, right? Through gunpowder military attack, right? So Ottoman Empire now had to find, a way to recruit what? Soldiers, right? So this is how Ottoman Empire came up with as a solution, is establish this Devshirme, right? Known as blood tax. That is what they would somehow kind of gonna kidnap, right? Kidnap the Christian boys, hence boys, okay, young children, and enlist them into this Devshirme military, right? So Ottoman Empire's logic was, we have the problem with Balkans Christians, right? Religious conflicts, and they are so stubborn, they just don't want to convert, right? They're willing to pay the tax to continue to worship their God. Okay, and that's not good. Eventually, it gonna pose a potential threat to the legitimacy of the government, right? So Ottoman Empire demand this Balkans Christianity, the Christian families, to sort of surrender their sons at a very young age. Why? So the Ottoman Empire could recruit them into the military force, right? And have this special Christian young boy, okay, started to learn about Islam, started to learn Quran, okay, Sharia law, everything. So brainwash these young boys. So when these young boys grew up, they're gonna be a very convinced and devoted Muslim, right? And then Ottoman Empire would place them back to Balkans to rule over Balkans, what, Christian families. So it would be, your own people come back with a different religious practice to control you, the Balkans, right? So they control these Christian boys at age 8, right? From these Christian nobles and elites, and then putting them into military service, right? And among us, these Janissaries, these Christian boys, their title or their rank, it's called Janissaries, all right? So Janissaries. They were trained to be loyal and fight for only the Sultan, right? So brainwash these kids at age 8, okay? And forced to convert to Islam. Not like, use military power to force them. It's like, using this incentive as well, right? And sometimes, castrated. Okay, so they won't pose harm to the Sultan, right? And this provided the Sultan with a loyal elite fighting force, right? Because you kind of educate them the idea you want to, implant into this boy's brain, right? And then this Janissaries would control Balkans and the Turkish elite, okay, for the Sultan, right? So this is the golden age of Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire. So you see here is the former Byzantine Empire, right? And here would be the Balkans, Slavic world, right? And here is part of Arabia Peninsula and the west part, and part of what? North Africa as well. And what happened to this Arabian world? They went back to this, city-states status, right? So that's our first Muslim gunpowder empire, Ottoman Empire, right? So next empire would be Safavid. Okay, but before we talk about Safavid, let's take a break, right? Let's take 5 and we'll come back and talk about Safavid, right? All right, let's come back. If you're back, type 1, please. One. Okay. All right, thank you. Welcome back. All right, so now let's move on to Safavid Empire, also known as Persian Empire, right? Because they're Persian government, right? But they are Islamized by now. All right, Safavid Empire. They exist between 1506 to 1736, right? When this Yokum faded, right? Mongol Empire. So Mongol and Turkish invaders, they had been chased out. Okay. So a native, that would be Persian. Okay. And last empire reemerged in 1506, right? And they is later known as this Safavid Empire. Reestablished Persia as a major economic and political power because the government is now controlled by Persian people, all right? So they become major economic and political power for the first time since Rome, right? After the Rome conquered Persian Empire, and then Persian people was like, governed by foreigners, okay, all the way till the establishment of Safavid Empire, right? And they actually adopt this modern gunpowder weapons. Okay, so basically when we talk about land-based empire, oh, by the way, today we're talking about land-based empire, right? So land-based empire, that would be Ottoman, right? Mongol, Safavid, and Mughal, right? Also Qing dynasty. We're in Qing dynasty now, right? In that case, okay, all this land-based empire, if you're being asked with the question, how these land-based empires manage to consolidate their power, okay, don't hesitate. Gunpowder, because they witness the power of gunpowder, right? And it's so efficient. So Safavid Empire, no exception, they also rely on the gunpowder to establish themselves. All right. And after that, they use religion as the means to consolidate their legitimacy. All right. Also, what the Safavid Empire is most known? Well, it's most known because it's official establishment of Shia Islam. Why is that so special? Because Shia is minority in Islamic world, right? So it's the first minority Shia Islam established this big empire, right? And also the largest Shia state in history. And we kept mentioning that these would be modern days Iran, right? And Iran, again, is Shia Islam, all right? Shia Islam. So this establishment of Persian identity, all right, and ground laying for modern days Iran, right? So amongst these Islamic states today, all right, Saudi Arabia, they're of course Arabia world, right? And then Iraq being in Islamized and also Arabized, right? But Iran Islamized, not Arabized. You go to Iran today, probably not a good time to travel, but eventually if you go, you will see people there speak Fars. Okay, Fars is their Persian language, right? So now let's talk about Ottoman and Safavid conflicts, okay? Mainly because they're religious conflicts, right? One is Shia, one is Sunni, right? So ill-placed Persian had always faced empire on multiple sides. Why? Because if you go back once again, Ottoman Empire, Shia, no, Sunni Muslim, right? How about Mughal? Mughal also Sunni. But in between these two Sunni Muslim empire, Safavid is a Shia Muslim, okay? That's why we say it's ill-placed, right? And Persian, they face, two enemies, one in the east, one in the west, okay? But Mughal, the conflicts between Mughal and Safavid was pretty minimal, all right? The major conflicts would be, versus Ottoman Empire, right? And that's why Ottoman Empire constantly engaged at war with the Safavid, and that took a toll of this, once mighty empire, and then gradually become the sick man of Europe, all right? So conflict with Mughal was okay, it was minimal, but conflicts against the Ottoman, Sunni Islam, spent for over 200 years, right? And these conflicts took a massive toll on both. And that explains why Safavid ended, right, in 1736, right? And were like embodied like state versus state conflicts. Before Ottoman versus Safavid conflicts, these conflicts within Islamic world was mainly religion, right? So mainly religion, who should be the legitimate heir to Muhammad, right? But Ottoman and Safavid upgraded, right? It becomes state versus state. When we say state versus state, that includes politics, all right? It includes economy, all right? Of this early Sunni Shia Islam split, all right? So Ottoman Empire would outlast Safavid, right? Because Safavid ended in 1736, but Ottoman last all the way till the midst of World War I in 1917, when people, overthrown their sultan. Their sultan actually abdicate. That's the only option left to the sultan that time, all right? Because Ottoman was not doing good in World War I, right? So it outlasted Safavid, but Safavid was responsible for spreading and enforcing Shia Islam, okay? That influenced later Iran, right? And Shia Islam, they want to distinguish themselves from Sunni Islam, right? So Shia Islam, their monarch, their ruler, it's not sultan, it's not caliph, it's called Shah, all right, Shah. And if you recall the Iranian revolution in 1979, okay, yeah, 1979, that was the time the Iranian society overthrown their King Shah, okay? And did you find that book called Persepolis? Highly recommend you to read that book, right? So you will have better understanding of all this Islamic history, all right? So Shah would be the king for Shia Islam, all right? So Safavid Empire forced Shia Islam and its state religion. So state religion is what? That would be the only legal religion to practice within their kingdom, their empire, right? So its leader claimed divine political and spiritual power. Again, state building, right? Land-based empire. Gunpowder to establish the kingdom, the empire, and religion to legitimate the rule, right? Okay, so that would be Safavid. Okay, so brainwash you again with this map, all right? So we have Ottoman, we have Safavid. Now let's move on to Mughal. Mughal is in India, right? Modern day India. So India was ruled by Islamic power for quite a long time, all right? That's why you can still see Muslim in India as of today. Okay, so in India, you'll find Muslim, Hindus, and Buddhists, and Christians, all right? And Mughal Empire. Mughal Empire, this is how you pronounce that, Mughal, right? There were a group of what? Turco-Mongol invaders from the former khanates of Chagatai and Ilkhans, right? So actually it's culturally diverse. They defeated and overtook this Delhi, right? Remember, Delhi was not supported by local Indian people anyway, because they are brutal to Hindus and Buddhists, right? So Delhi was ended in 1526, right? And this new government, that time to Delhi, definitely these people would be considered as invaders, right? But these invaders, they're also officially Muslim. So key difference between Mughal rulers versus Delhi predecessors was because what? Delhi, not tolerant, actually very brutal, okay, to non-Muslims. But Mughal was like, tolerance for the local diversity of India. Smart, right? Because India has a very rooted culture, Hinduism. So coming from Persia, Turkic and Mongol race, right? So the government itself was culturally diverse already. That kind of explains why they are tolerant to, different religious practice, right? So the Mughal emperors, they were used to diversity and syncretization. It's like we ourselves were syncretized, right? So of course we recognize, the desire from the local people want to continue their own practice, right? So this made far more successful, right, than the intolerant Delhi Sultanate. And actually, Mughal Empire was considered as the golden age of Indian history, even though this golden age was ruled by foreigners, right? But still, the prosperity cannot be denied, right? So Mughal Empire would be known as the golden age of India, okay, under foreigners' rule, right? Just kind of, Qing Dynasty, right? Manchurian, right? So Chinese history, you can also say Kang Qian Sheng Shi, right? So Kangxi and then Yongzheng and Qianlong, these three emperors, kind of expanded Chinese empire, the territory, to the largest extent, right? Also, the economic prosperity during this three emperors could be concluded as golden age of China as well. But again, Qing Dynasty was under Manchurian, okay, government's control, right? So let's talk about, do we have any, the Great? Yep, we have Akbar the Great. Akbar the Great, right? So by 1555, the ruler of Akbar the Great had either conquered or ingeniously gathered the support of locals, right? Because he demonstrated religious freedom, right? And this Hindi and Sikh kingdoms, right? The local, remember, Delhi did not conquer the center and south of India, right? So even when Delhi empire still exists, within this Indian subcontinent of India, there are still local government. They have their own kingdoms.
Sorry, Vicky. Could you invite Lucas in?
Sure. Okay. Thank you for reminding me. Okay. So in this case, what? Mughal only controlled the northern part of India, right? And the center and southern part was still controlled by their local government, either is Hindi or Sikh, all right? And then when Mughal Empire came, right, established, the local kingdom actually support this foreign government because they believe, if you join this big empire, you have more benefit than drawbacks. You have protection, right? And especially this new government did not prohibit Hinduism, right? Anywho, so Mughal allow local ethnic rulers to keep their power, even better, right? As long as they remain loyal and pay their tax. Does that remind you of some other empire that set this, example for the later kingdom or empire to follow? And that's, yes, Ryan. Which empire does that remind you of prior to Mughal? Can I hear you? Mongol, thank you. Yes. So Mongol Empire was that they did not really leave the world, much legacy, right? Because they did not invent this international language as Mongolian. No, okay. And they did not have a, influential religion, right? No, not like, Christianity, not like Islam, right? But Mongol did leave a legacy for the later empires to, follow. That would be maintain the local autonomy, right? And that kind of a government system would be what? Tribute, right? Tributary states, right? So you see, after Mongol, whichever empire, okay, you want to be successful, you adopt Mongols policy, tributary system. Makes sense? So that's pretty much what Mongol has left the world. And zamindars, okay, whatever their ethnicity could be, they function as a governors of the region. All right. So you could be Hindus, you could be Buddhist, all right, doesn't matter, but you can function as the governor of the region, right? And they were responsible for collecting taxes for the central government and participating in the military, kind of like European feudalism, right? To some extent, but not exactly the same, right? European feudalism is like, the kingdom within a big government called Roman Catholic Church, right? But Mughal Empire itself, it's a big government already, a centralized government, right? Just they allowed the local people to continue their practice, right? So this zamindars is just a term to refer to the local governors, right? Local governors. All right. Mughals prosperity. This is the Taj Mahal. Okay. Taj Mahal. They're famous for what? For this symmetry, right? So this Taj Mahal was a tomb actually. He was their king. Okay, their sultan. Construct this Taj Mahal for the late queen. Okay, his beloved late queen, right? And Mughal, of course, used gunpowder to establish, to consolidate their power, right? And create their empire. And later on, you see religion is one way to legitimate their rule. The other approach would be the building. Look at this building, Taj Mahal, right? It's a tomb. No individual needs such a big tomb, right? Okay. But the Sultan used that as a gesture to show his power, right? And it become a tour site in modern days India, right? If you watch the movie called Bucket List, anybody watch the movie called Bucket List? Bucket List? I think it was somewhere in 2000. Oh man, 2008 maybe, if I remember right. Bucket List. Jack Nicholson, Morgan Freeman. No, highly recommended. Okay, so if you watch that movie Bucket List, you will see this two men. They travel around the world. When they were told they're in this terminal stage of their cancer, so they want to finish whatever was left on their to-do list. And one stop on their list is to visit this Taj Mahal. Okay, so it's not for its symmetry. So we see this main tower, okay, and this is like axis, okay, the center, and everything is like in pair. It's like you're looking into the mirror, okay. Even the reflection of the building, even the bushes alongside this waterway, the shape of the plants also is symmetric. All right, so that's the Mughal prosperity. All right, so this Mughal empire is the #1 producer of manufactured goods. Why? Because once they unite, okay, Hindus, right, they have the high population to provide with the labor force. So Mughal Empire was able to claim this #1 producer of manufactured good, because that time the world was not industrialized yet. So even its manufactured goods, it's rely on human labor. Okay. Also, it's harness gunpowder weapons, right? Of course, just as their Islamic counterpart, right? And their prosperity can be shown through this construction of Taj Mahal, right? Anywho, so this is the golden age of Mughal Empire, pretty much modern days India. Yeah. Okay, so we have the land-based empire, and all three of them, they happen to be Muslim Islamic empire. Okay, now let's move on to Qing Dynasty, right? Qing Dynasty is also a land-based, right? And how did Qing Dynasty rise up? Gunpowder, right? Gunpowder. So before Qing, we have Ming, right? What happened to Ming? Fall of Ming Dynasty. Either way, okay, either it's corrupt government, okay, or like, internal conflicts and riots, rebellion of the peasants, or foreign invader, or what, famine, poverty, okay, or, like a nature disaster, pandemic, all right? So which one trigger the fall of Ming? Let's take a look. So Ming Dynasty, Ming initially maintained the sea trade, right? And naval emphasis. So their Admiral Zheng He, remember him, right? Kind of represent the Ming government to trade with foreign states along the Indian Ocean, right? And the furthest we get to was Egypt, right? So Ming, followed by Song, right? Before the Mongols, right? So they soon changed their focus and spending. So Ming Dynasty initially, kind of, carry on the practice from the previous dynasty, right? So Song Yuan, Song already promote trade, and Mongol Yuan, right? They revived Silk Road, right? And Ming, of course, carry on, right? But later on, they will change their focus and spending. So instead of focusing on world influence, Ming started to what? Ignore the outside world and focusing on defense. Okay, so they kind of want to, shut down the door and want to be isolated from the rest of the world, mainly because what? The Europeans show the sign of rising up, right? And to China, it's like, no, we don't need to. One thing is we don't need to, okay? We don't need to trade with you because we are the Middle Kingdom. And the other is like, no, China did, Ming Dynasty at the time did not want, did not even recognize, the achievement of Europeans. To Ming Dynasty, this is just pure luck, okay? And luck does not last long, right? So instead of focusing on world influence, Ming focused internally and largely ignored the world, right? And isolated itself from the rest of the world. So we have this disastrous silver-only tax policy. Why is that, become a disaster? Because the government now focus on domestic, right? So domestic, even if domestic, Ming Dynasty was still pretty big, right? So the domestic trade, if you want to boom up your economy, you encourage trade, right? And in order to motivate people to trade more, you're gonna make their trade easier, right? So ancient time, okay, merchants, they would trade with cartloads of like gold and silver. So dangerous, right? And too heavy. So Ming Dynasty started to promote the concept of paper money, all right? So that time the paper money is not like, the paper money we know today, all right? It was more like, a piece of paper showing that this paper worth how much, all right? So modern days banknotes, okay, it will have like a fixed value, dollar amount on the banknotes, right? So if you look at your quality, you may find a dollar with a Washington's face on it, right? And then that indicates, okay, this paper worth $1 US, right? If you see Benjamin Franklin, my favorite, he worth $100, all right? But that time, the value of the paper money was not fixed, all right? It's based on, your needs. So you study, okay, this money, okay, this kind of like a certificate. So prove that with this, certificates, you can cash in for like, an ounce of gold, all right? Or 2 ounces of silver, all right? So that kind of paper money, right? So in order to endorse this paper money, right? Because paper money is what we call fiat money, fiat, right? There are 2 types of money. One is called commodity. Commodity money is like gold, silver, and modern days could also be like a diamond, okay? That means what? This form of money, even if the government failed, all right, the money is still worth, okay, something. All right, that's called commodity money. All right. For example, if you go back to like Tang Dynasty, you have like Guan Yin, right? So it's a silver. It's a shape like a yuanbao, right? So it's made of silver. And if you look at the bottom of that money, you will see like the seal from the Tang Dynasty, Tang government, right? So that was a official money, but it's called commodity. So even if Tang government eventually fell, right? But that silver with this the stamp of Tang government at the bottom still worth something because it's a silver. That's called commodity. But if the paper money, okay, the paper money is a different story. The paper money is only valuable if the government who issued that still exists, all right, or still possess this credibility, trust from the market or in the world, right? So you know, when you see Benjamin Franklin, it believe it worth $100, right? That's because this piece of paper is endorsed by U.S. government, all right? So if the U.S. government somehow failed and this piece of paper only worth like, I believe it's like less than $1, slightly close to produce, okay? So if, I say if, all right, if American government failed, okay, and whatever US dollars you have become worthless, all right, that's paper money, that's called fiat money, right? So if a government is not running the country well, you will see the value of the currency started to depreciate because people started to lose faith in this government, right? And the money is endorsed by the government, right? So back to Ming Dynasty, right? Ming Dynasty. The government started to promote the adaptation of paper money, right? So that means what? Ming government must prove that they have enough silver to endorse the paper money. Otherwise, rational individual, they would not be willing to accept this paper money. That makes sense? So in order to endorse the paper money, Ming government changed their taxation system. No longer accept crops as a form of tax. All the farmers, okay, or merchants, whatever, okay, you cannot pay your tax with silver. So the government can collect more silver to endorse the paper money, okay? And this is bad, why? Then the demand for silver will increase, right? And China does not really produce silver, all right? And then China had to what? Figure a way to get their hands on the silver. So which state does produce silver? Japan. Japan also spend, right? Spain did not produce, but they got their silver from America, right? So these silver only tax policy, along with this loss of economic output, right? They also focus primarily on northern defense. Everything together lead to the downfall of Ming Dynasty, right? So by 1644, the sleeping Ming Dynasty lost out to the northern invaders, right? From Manchuria, okay? It was Wu Sangui, right? He opened the gate and allowed Manchuria to enter and then, take down Beijing, right? The forbidden city. So none of the Manchu people, the invader quickly took over and adopted much of the already established Chinese culture. So you see in Chinese history, there are two dynasties. That's when China was actually ruled by foreigners, right? So the first one is Yuan, ruled by Mongol. The second dynasty would be Qing, ruled by Manchuria, right? But in these two dynasties, okay, you see Chinese culture was not like, being replaced by this foreign rulers, but instead it's the foreign government, foreign rulers, they adopt Chinese culture. Why is that? Anyone? Why is the other way around? Like Islam, they would what? They would become the dominant culture in this conquered land, right? But how come in China, two foreign government, these two dynasties, when they invaded China, okay, they did not marginalize Chinese culture. Instead, they're being syncretized. Why? Why is that? Anyone? That could be your complexity though in your essay, because you are now thinking as a historian, right? You think deeper. Why? Why China is an exception in this land-based empire? Other land-based empire, when they conquer people like Islam, right? They promote their own culture, right? And marginalize the local culture. But it did not happen in China. Anybody? This is an open question though. Let's see. Ren, are you there?
Yeah,
Hey, what do you say?
I don't know. Maybe the Chinese thought they were self-sufficient and they just don't want others to interfere with their own culture.
Maybe, but the new government, they possess gunpowder. They can oppress the society though. If the foreign, the Yuan and Qing dynasty really want to force Chinese society to convert, to adopt Yuan, I mean Mongolian culture or Manchurian culture, they could. They have gunpowder. Actually, there's one, Qing dynasty, right? The hairstyle was a must. See? So that's an example, evidence to counter-argue your thesis. Well, could be the society's resistance, right? Possible. Any other possibilities? Sunny Chan? Sunny Chan, you there? Sunny, are you there? Yes, thank you. Is your microphone working? Yeah, yes, okay, so could you unmute yourself? Let's talk. Why do you think Chinese culture was able to maintain even after two foreign governments rule? Sunny? I have a code. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Okay, sorry for that. So you can type, right? So how about we back to who is first? Alex, what do you say? Alex,
I don't know.
it's an open question. There's no correct answer.
I don't know. Maybe because like it's like really hard to replace the system or something.
So it's hard for the foreign governments to convert Chinese society.
I
Is that what
guess,
you
I
say?
don't know.
Okay, so why is no difficult?
Because like the population, you have to like convert like all the land.
Also, the other possibility could be like Chinese culture has like very rooted Confucianism, right?
Yeah.
So it's different from like Egypt, because Egypt was already conquered by Rome, right? Before Rome, it was Greece, right? Possible, all right? Okay, so if it's up to me to answer to this open question, I would say for first reason is what Chinese society has this long-lasting culture called Confucianism. It can be traced all the way back to Han Dynasty, right? So when the culture is so rooted, it's difficult to challenge. And for reason number two, Confucianism, it's a convenient tool for this foreign government to control over Chinese society. Remember? So as long as you can adopt Confucianism, right? And show to the Chinese society that you also inherit this mandate of heaven, right? Mandate of heaven. So you are the chosen one by heaven. And then the society will automatically recognize your authority, right? That's number 2, right? And number 3 is these 2 dynasties, Mongolian, right? Yuan, Manchurian, Qing, right? They did not really have like, their unique culture or religious practice, right? So that explains why Mongol Empire, they practice tributary system, right? And Manchurian, they were also a nomadic tribes before they managed to be united, right? So that explains why they did not have their own system to replace Chinese system. Okay, so if it's up to me, I would have these 3 arguments, right? Anywho, so Manchu, they just took whatever is convenient, right? So this is a Chinese culture, also known as Confucianism, right? And political system to rule over Chinese society, and known as Qing, right? So Qing dynasty, again, they use this Confucian examination system, right? Civil service. And by doing so, you will see Qing government can legitimate their rule, right? So look, I also promote Confucianism. And in this case, this mandate of heaven would automatically incorporate in Qing government, right? And then what else is special about Qing dynasty? If you want to participate in Qing government, you could go through this civil service exam, right? So that was the system practice back in Tang and Song, right? Especially Song. So that kind of government will show kind of a sign indicates this government is partial, right? It's not like favoring the social elite. It's not adopting this nepotism, right? So everybody has the chance to work in the government and make a fortune, make a success, right? / fortune, right? So this left the government slots only open to elites who could afford to send their male son to study for years, because you want to memorize the whole book, okay, of the dialect of Confucius. Okay, that took time, right? Especially not just to memorize it, you need to know the logic, you need to be able to argue upon the topic, right? The teaching of Confucius. So it normally takes like at least a decade, okay, for a student to prepare for this exam, right? And so even though it's not nepotism, but this kind of process normally is not possible to common household, right? Because the investment is way too much. So yeah, you will see this social elites, they tend to be more likely to become the government officials, right? But still, at least it's not nepotism, right? So leaving this many government officials untrained for actual governing an economy role, right? It actually provides China with this unified culture, right? Again, the culture would be Confucianism, right? And help maintain the social harmony. Okay. This is the territory of a Qing dynasty. Okay, the massive. So you can claim that this is the golden age of, no, another golden age of Chinese history, right? So you compare the territory, it's even greater than Tang and Song, right? And it's a foreign rule, right? Kangxi, right? So Qing expansion and power. So Emperor Kangxi, if we want, we can say Kangxi the Great, all right? Because he managed to expand China's territory, right? So he apology for that. I dropped my earphone. Okay. So Kangxi, he reclaimed Taiwan from Ming, right? And then expanded the territory to Tibet. Okay. And then what else? Oh, religious tolerance, right? And then he had a Chinese cucumber, right? Han Fei, okay, and did not really bend this interracial marriage, right? So Kangxi, and you see how he legitimate his rule by commission the artist to paint this portrait. Okay, and when you look at it, okay, you'll be in awe as well. All right, so Kangxi would be the one that considered as the great in Qing dynasty. Okay, because he was pretty open-minded, and he was not like prejudiced upon Western inventions. Okay. And domestic policy wise, there's one thing they really insist to convert Chinese society is the hairstyle, right? So if you don't shave men, okay, only for men, if you don't shave your head, you will lose your head, right? So you have options. Choose one among these two, right? Your hair or your head, right? And one particular, yes. Okay, one particular policy oppression is banning the intermarriage. We just claimed that Kangxi had Han company, right? But in the society, it's not allowed because Manchurian want to secure their royal blood. So if there is interracial marriage, it somehow will taint their royal blood, right? And that's one they banned. Okay, so that's a one way to mirror what this Islamic empire, right? Ottoman Empire. So Chinese Han people now is considered, the second class citizen under Qing government, right? But of course, you can still, build up your career by study Confucianism and took the civil service exam, right? And they did not ban this, possibility. All right, and but ethnic concern, Han people would be considered as a second-class citizen, just like the Dimas in Ottoman Empire, right? So in this chapter, I will highly recommend you to create your own comparison and contrast table, right? Because we have so many land-based empire, and then they have some similarity and differences, right? Okay, and so again, this Manchu imposed this cultural aspect on Han to demonstrate their dominance, right? So we are in charge, right? So you Han people, you are now the second-class citizen, okay? But we are not going to ban, okay, your cultural practice, but still you need to recognize who is in charge, right? And somewhat to their culture, okay? But Confucianism remain the core in Chinese society. All right, so with Qing dynasty, we conclude Unit 3, land-based empire. And the age of exploration, we conclude Unit 4, the interoceanic interaction, right? So we finished Unit 1, 2, 3, 4 so far, right? So we are right on schedule. This is our 4th class meeting, right? So we have land-based empire, we have transoceanic interconnection. That's actually the age of exchange, okay? Network of exchange and age exploration. All right. So today our homework is back to multiple choice question. I already sent it to your TA. Okay. So she or he will forward to you. Okay. Again, use our strategy from yesterday to do POE. Okay. And be careful of the keyword, all right? Nouns and adjectives. And the paraphrase pattern College Board prefer is what? Hypernym paraphrase. All right. Okay, then. Any questions you guys may have? Questions? No? In that case, thank you for attending. So appreciate it. Okay, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. Thank you. All right. And if you have no questions, you all have a good day or good night and happy holidays. I'll talk to you tomorrow. All right. Bye. Good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Merry
bye.
Christmas.
Bye. Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you.